just by drinking a single bottle of black tea provided by the company. This man worked frantically as if he were on stimulants. He actually worked overtime like a madman from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. Even more ridiculous was that he not only felt no fatigue, but actually felt he could continue working until the next day. However, just then, he rolled up his sleeves, only to discover that his arm was covered in strange bumps.
Stranger.
Hey.
Did I catch you reminiscing about last night? 'Cause that's all I've been doing this morning.
You caught me.
At Trump Tower in New York, a woman working overtime carefully rolled up her sleeves, revealing that her arm was covered in bumps of various sizes, appearing as if she had contracted some kind of infectious disease. Her name was Rachel, and she was the company's marketing planner. Looking at the bumps on her arm, she revealed a panicked expression. Just then, the phone on the desk suddenly rang. It was a call from her mother, Tammy. Rachel told her mother that she was still working overtime at the company and had a very important meeting tonight. Hearing that her daughter was still working overtime, her mother felt the company was going too far, questioning why they made employees work so late at night. But before Tammy could finish speaking, Rachel began to cough. At that moment, the company supervisor Kelsey walked over, and Rachel hurriedly hung up the phone. At Kelsey's request, Rachel arrived at the conference room where the company's senior executives had already been waiting for a long time. This meeting was to discuss whether Rachel could be promoted. However, before Kelsey could speak, Rachel suddenly proposed that she wanted to resign. Hearing her words, the three people present were somewhat stunned. But before Rachel could give her reason, she began coughing frantically.
Rachel? No, Rachel.
Yet looking at Rachel on the floor, the company executives remained expressionless, seeming to have become accustomed to this long ago. The scene shifts to a bar where a man is singing on the stage. As his melodious singing voice rose, the guests in the bar were attracted by his sound. His name was Luke, a singer who loved classical music. Although his singing was very good in this fast-paced era, there were not many people who liked this kind of music anymore. Seeing the sparse applause, Luke couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Because there were few customers, his income today was a pitiful $300. However, while Luke was chatting with a customer, he accidentally ran into his good friend Andy. Andy used to be a bassist in a band and was also a music lover. But due to the pressure of life, he had to give up his dream and find a job. Seeing that Luke was still singing at the bar, Andy took out a business card and told Luke that the company he worked for happened to be hiring, and the job content was promoting a type of black tea beverage, requiring no experience or excellent academic qualifications.
What's the pay like?
Entry level starts at $100K. No experience required. Think about it.
Hearing Andy's introduction, Luke was somewhat tempted, but thinking of his guitar, he was a bit reluctant to part with it. Just as he was struggling with whether to give it a try, his girlfriend Elise found him. It turned out that since graduation, Luke had been singing in bars, and although his monthly income was over $3,000, it was still unable to meet the household expenses. Elise wanted Luke to give it a try. After all, they were getting married soon, and money was needed everywhere. His girlfriend's words made Luke feel uncomfortable. He felt insulted, and they had a dispute because of this. In order to prove himself, he took out that business card and decided to go take a look tomorrow. Early the next morning, Luke arrived at Symbio Corporation, which Andy had mentioned. Just as he arrived at the lobby, he saw a jar of yellow liquid. Beside the glass jar was a brief introduction, roughly describing the origin of the company. It turned out that this company mainly produced a fermented black tea called Kombucha, and the company had a history of over 100 years. Led by Kelsey, Luke arrived at the company's conference room. At first, Luke was a bit diffident. After all, he had no work experience. But to his surprise, Kelsey didn't care about degrees or experience at all. She just asked some simple questions and then took out the labor contract. Luke checked carefully and found that the hourly wage was not the $100 Andy had mentioned, but $107. What surprised Luke even more was that this was only the probationary wage. If he became a regular employee, the hourly wage would reach $150. In addition to the basic salary, the company also had a reward system where for every order completed, he could take a 1% commission reward, cashed out on the spot with no arrears. Looking at such high remuneration, Luke was a little worried, wondering what if he couldn't handle the job. However, Kelsey told him not to worry. His task was very simple, just to maintain the clients of the previous staff member. Submit orders when customers place them, and help plan activities when customers need events. Looking at the confident Kelsey, Luke was a bit dazed, wondering what exactly the company's beverage was and why it was so popular.
But what if they don't like kombucha?
Believe it or not, we've never run into that problem before. Everybody gets on board eventually. Do you partake?
I don't. Those floating Scoby things kind of freak me out.
Okay, well, don't worry. You'll get over that. Do you know what SCOBY stands for?
No.
Symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. A natural, harmonious partnership. Really nothing to be afraid of.
Although he felt the work tasks were a bit ridiculous, faced with such a high salary, Luke still couldn't refuse, so he immediately signed the employment contract, deciding to work for a while to see. After completing the onboarding paperwork, Kelsey led Luke to his workstation. But as soon as he got there, he saw a memorial photo on the desk, along with several bouquets of flowers. Kelsey hurriedly threw these things into the trash can, explaining that the previous employee had unfortunately passed away due to a sudden illness, and these were things everyone used to commemorate her. Luke didn't pay it much mind. However, just as Kelsey was introducing Luke to new colleagues, an old woman suddenly burst into the corridor. From Andy, Luke learned that this old woman was Tammy, the mother of the colleague who had died of sudden illness previously. Although it was a sudden illness, because Rachel died at the company still paid Tammy millions in compensation according to standard procedures. But because she lost her daughter, Tammy couldn't accept it, so she would come to the company to cause trouble. Hearing Andy's explanation, Luke thought Tammy just couldn't accept reality, so he didn't care either. After simply familiarizing himself with the business process, Luke went back to his apartment first and told his girlfriend about finding a job, hoping she would forgive him. However, Elise felt she needed to think it over carefully. To prove himself to his girlfriend, Luke decided to work hard and make sure to achieve results. Early the next morning, Luke came to the company full of confidence. Downstairs, he even encountered a street singer. Looking at the passionate girl, Luke generously took out $10. However, shortly after Luke went upstairs, the girl singing at the door was chased away by security. Seeing Luke drinking coffee, Kelsey wanted him to taste the company's kombucha. But Luke didn't like tea. Seeing Kelsey suddenly get angry, Luke felt it was a bit strange. Just then, Andy walked over and told Luke he had better try the company's kombucha drink. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to describe it properly when talking to customers. Luke also felt that made sense, but he had only taken one sip of his coffee and wanted to wait until he finished it. However, before Luke could finish speaking, he looked up to see his colleagues staring at him weirdly. But when he looked again, he saw that everyone was busy with their own work. So he assumed he must have been mistaken and didn't think much of it. Under Andy's persuasion, he had to take a bottle of kombucha drink from the refrigerator. However, before he was ready to drink, Kelsey impatiently began to urge him. Looking at the strange Kelsey, Luke couldn't refuse, so he had to open the cap and try a sip. The taste of kombucha was a bit odd with a slimy sensation. Seeing Luke drink the beverage, Kelsey walked away satisfied. Back at his workstation, Luke turned on his computer. A client needed event planning and required him to produce a proposal. Coincidentally, this was Luke's major, so he opened PowerPoint and started working. During the work process, Luke took a few more sips of the kombucha drink, but to his surprise, the strange texture from earlier was completely gone, replaced by a sweet aftertaste. The more he drank, the better it tasted, and unknowingly he finished the whole bottle. However, when he came back to his senses, he found it was already evening, and his colleagues had all left. Luke looked back and realized it was already 8 p.m. He thought he had just been too focused on work and didn't mind. He sent the proposal to Kelsey and turned to leave the company. While walking through the lobby, he specifically glanced at the glass jar at the entrance, lamenting that no wonder so many people liked tea. The tea water was surprisingly delicious. However, Luke, who turned to leave, did not notice that some tiny things were breeding inside the glass jar. Early the next morning, Luke came to the company as usual. Just as he arrived at the door, he saw Kelsey and others waiting for him. It turned out the client was very satisfied with his proposal yesterday and directly ordered $500,000 worth of goods. According to the agreement at the time of employment, Luke could take away a $5,000 commission today. Looking at the check Kelsey handed over, Luke was caught off guard and immediately texted his girlfriend. Learning that Luke earned $5,000 on his first day of work, Elise was also very happy. To celebrate, they went to a restaurant for steak. Seeing that Luke had really changed, Elise decided to hold the engagement ceremony next month. Hearing his girlfriend's decision, Luke was also very happy. Early the next morning, Luke arrived at the company as usual, and Andy handed him a bottle of kombucha. Looking at the drink in his hand, Luke remembered the scene from a few days ago. At that time, he only drank one bottle and didn't feel tired all day. He suspected the drink contained stimulants. However, Andy told him it was actually due to tea polyphenols, and the company's kombucha drink not only refreshed the mind, but also improved digestion. Looking at the strange Andy, Luke felt something was wrong. This time he didn't drink it, but secretly poured it down the drain. Just as Luke speculated, there was indeed a problem with the company's kombucha drink. For the rest of the day, he couldn't concentrate and felt muddled. But this wasn't the weirdest part. After work, Luke lay in bed tossing and turning, feeling terrible all over. Early the next morning, a despondent Luke came to the company. As soon as he entered, he couldn't wait to go to the refrigerator and take out a bottle of kombucha. It wasn't until he finished the whole bottle that he felt the discomfort subside. However, Luke, who was drinking freely, didn't know that once he took a sip of this kombucha drink, he would never be able to quit. Meanwhile, at a coffee shop downstairs, Tammy found Elise. It turned out that after the date with Luke that day, Elise always felt something was wrong with the company Luke worked for, so she looked up information about this kombucha drink online. On a forum post, Elise accidentally saw Tammy's comment. Tammy said, "Symbio Corporation was a terrible place that exploited employees daily, and her daughter died of sudden death due to high-intensity work." Elise met with Tammy to ask about the situation. Tammy told Elise about Rachel becoming a workaholic after joining the company. Although Rachel could earn tens of thousands of dollars a month, she had endless work every day, often working overtime until 8 p.m. Less than 3 months after joining the company, Rachel became a different person. Besides working crazy hours, Tammy discovered another situation. Rachel often recommended the company's kombucha drink to her, saying it was good for health. But Tammy didn't like tea and refused her daughter's recommendation. Unexpectedly, Rachel suddenly got angry and moved out of the house. When Tammy received a call again, she learned that her daughter had an accident at the company. She always suspected that her daughter must have encountered an evil boss. She had also called the police, but the company had already paid a huge amount of compensation according to regulations, so the police could not file a case. Hearing Tammy's explanation, Elise thought the other party just couldn't accept her daughter's death. But just as she was about to leave, Tammy reminded Elise not to let Luke drink the company's kombucha. Although she felt Tammy's warning was a bit ridiculous, Elise also felt something was strange. She texted Luke, wanting to meet him at a bar. But at this time, Luke was working overtime at the company and didn't look at his phone at all. In the following weeks, Luke completely turned into a workaholic, spending every day either rushing proposals or attending meetings. Noticing something was wrong with Luke, Elise remembered Tammy's warning. She found Luke and told him about Rachel's experience. However, at this time, Luke was completely obsessed and couldn't listen to Elise's warning at all. He even tried to pitch the company's kombucha drink to Elise. Seeing Elise refuse, Luke left the bar angrily. Without Elise's disturbance, Luke devoted himself wholeheartedly to his work, and in the following months he signed several more large orders. Luke's growth made Kelsey very happy, and she decided to promote Luke, making him the leader of a new team. To celebrate Luke's promotion, Kelsey specifically treated Luke to a big meal. While waiting at the restaurant, Elise called, but Luke no longer had his past enthusiasm. He coldly rejected Elise, saying he was in a meeting. Before Elise could speak, Luke hung up the phone. After dinner with Kelsey, Luke even went to Kelsey's house to discuss work with her. Happy Luke was immersed in his career rise, unable to extricate himself. However, just when he thought he could reach the pinnacle of life, an accident happened. This morning, Luke suddenly felt his arm itching. He rolled up his sleeve, only to see his arm covered in small bumps.
Stranger.
Hey.
Did I catch you reminiscing about last night? 'Cause that's all I've been doing this morning.
You caught me.
At first, Luke thought it was physical problems due to working overtime every day, and he prepared to go to the hospital after work. However, during a meeting, something strange happened again. He actually saw the painting on the wall start to twist, but when Luke looked carefully again, the mural returned to its original state. The successive encounters made Luke a bit dazed. Thinking he was too tired, he went to the bathroom to wash his face and calm down. But when he looked up again, a bizarre scene occurred once more. Seeing hallucinations appearing constantly, Luke felt he couldn't delay any longer. He hurriedly left the company, wanting to go to the hospital for a checkup. But on the way to the hospital, he felt something wriggling in his stomach. He lifted his shirt, only to find some protrusions on his belly. The bizarre scene left Luke completely dumbfounded. He remembered Elise's warning. Was there really a problem with the company? He found Elise, wanting to figure out what was going on. He revealed the wounds on his arm. He didn't dare go to the hospital, afraid of being found to have some infectious disease. However, seeing that Luke also had bumps, Elise told him not to worry. She told Luke that this was not an infectious disease, but a reaction to addiction. It turned out that after arguing with Luke at the bar that day, Elise sensed something was wrong and took a sample of the kombucha drink for testing. Through analysis, Elise found a type of fungus in the drink. This fungus had the ability to induce excitement, allowing users to refresh their minds and concentrate. But if consumed for a long time, it would cause addiction, and in severe cases, even hallucinations. Elise speculated that Luke was experiencing addiction, and as long as he stopped drinking kombucha, these conditions would improve. Learning that the company's kombucha drink actually had such effects, Luke was stunned. No wonder they didn't feel tired working every day. This was the reason. Having figured everything out, Luke decided to resign. However, after just 2 hours without drinking kombucha, Luke felt terrible all over. Seeing the painful Luke, Elise could only find Tammy. Tammy brought some garlic for Luke. She told Luke that garlic could help ease his cravings. But as soon as he smelled the garlic, Luke felt his stomach churning and couldn't help but vomit. Looking at the worms on the ground, Luke was completely dumbfounded. However, from the perspective of Elise and the others, there was only a pool of saliva on the ground and no worms at all. Tammy told Elise that Rachel's condition before was even more serious than Luke's. She said she saw a monster and that monster was summoning her. Hearing Tammy's words, Luke also said he saw a monster, and that monster called itself Mother and had also issued a summons to him. Hearing Luke's description, Elise thought of a possibility.
It's still mostly just bacteria and yeast.
Hearing Elise's words, Luke remembered the jar of yellow liquid at the company entrance. Could the SCOBY Elise mentioned be that thing? Learning that the SCOBY was at the company, Elise decided to destroy it. Worried that Luke would hurt himself, they even tied him up with bed sheets. However, Elise didn't know that shortly after she and Tammy left the house, Kelsey appeared in the home. Looking at Luke on the bed, Kelsey unbuttoned her clothes. She actually brewed a fresh cup of drink on the spot and brought it to Luke's side. Smelling the kombucha, Luke uncontrollably drank it down. Meanwhile, Elise and Tammy also arrived at the company. Just in case, Tammy brought some garlic. Looking at the glass jar at the entrance, Elise took poison out of her backpack, preparing to pour it into the glass jar. However, just as the poison touched the glass jar, screams actually came from inside. Seeing the thing in the glass jar actually come to life, Elise and Tammy were both stunned. They just wanted to chase it, but turned back to see Andy appearing aside. It turned out that the SCOBY was connected to the other infected people. When the SCOBY was attacked, Andy felt the pain as well. Realizing that someone had broken into the company, he immediately called security. Tammy told Elise to chase after the SCOBY, while she stayed behind to hold Andy off. She took a cross out of her backpack, wanting God to protect her, but Andy wasn't possessed by a demon, but infected by a fungus, so God couldn't help either. Tammy was knocked out by Andy. Meanwhile, Elise chased the SCOBY to the company's conference room, but after searching every corner, she couldn't find it. Just as Elise was wondering, she noticed the wall beside her was emitting a red light. She just wanted to lift the mural, but Andy appeared behind her. She was also knocked to the ground by Andy. When Elise opened her eyes again, she found herself taken to a small red room, and inside the room was a terrifying monster. Just then, she saw Luke also appear in the room, walking towards the monster with dull eyes. And just as Luke walked over, a person also drilled out of the monster's body. This person was none other than another Luke. Luke, having lost all sense of self, walked toward the creature and was dragged over by its tentacles, while the duplicated Luke became the new Luke, taking over his identity. It turned out that the company was not using the kombucha drink to control employees at all, but using it to replace humans. Andy and Kelsey and the others had long been replaced. Subsequently, Kelsey and Andy left the small room with the clone. Watching Luke being gradually consumed by the creature, Elise completely panicked. She shouted loudly, wanting Luke to wake up. But no matter how she called, Luke didn't respond. Just when Luke was about to be completely swallowed, Elise saw the garlic on the ground. She kicked the garlic to the monster's side. The monster didn't notice and dragged the garlic over with its tentacles. The instant it touched the garlic, it let out a painful screech. The lost Luke finally woke up too. He broke free from the restraints and escaped the small room with Elise. Discovering Elise had escaped, Kelsey hurriedly led people to search everywhere in the company. To cover Elise, Luke lured the clones away. But just as she arrived at the door, Elise was blocked by Andy. Just then she saw garlic on the ground. Seeing that garlic was so useful, Elise decided to completely kill the monster. She returned to the small room with the garlic, but as soon as she entered the room, she was sneak attacked by Kelsey from behind, and they wrestled in the room. The modified Kelsey was obviously tougher, and Elise was no match at all. In the confusion, Elise lifted Kelsey's leg, and unexpectedly Kelsey hit the guardrail and fainted. Getting rid of Kelsey, Elise threw all the garlic next to the monster. The monster, touching the garlic, let out painful roars, and was eventually poisoned to death by the garlic. At the same time, the monster died. The other clones also lost their lives. Elise originally thought that killing the monster would end everything, but they didn't know that shortly after they left, a group of people took over the company. They changed the company's information in all drink packaging, and the repackaged drinks appeared on the market again. Clearly, the story of kombucha has only just begun.